Hello, welcome to the September 27th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test and then we will go ahead and get started. Hello, welcome to the September 27th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. Hello, welcome to the September 27th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test. Okay, so it sounds like my monitoring computer is fine. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host of the live stream. And if you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can submit questions in advance, or you could send them in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de, or you can just simply ask your questions in the chat field. When asking questions, if we could specify if you're running, which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's LE, AI, Elements, Artist Pro, whether it's version 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, or other Steinberg programs, and which operating system you're working on. That would be helpful. We will try to have a index of all the topics covered with timestamps pinned to the top of the comments field of the video that you could refer to later tonight. I have to watch the live stream again after a dinner break and create that, so it takes a couple of hours. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to create that website. You want to give special thanks to Jazz Dude and Agent K for their work. They serve as moderators, so they're not Steinberg employees. They just kind of do this for the benefit of the community. So I want to give a special thanks to them. And also just a special thanks to all of Jazz Dude's efforts for creating and compiling a lot of information for the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of tutorials and information for the Steinberg community. So, just a quick note that we will be having Friday's live stream will be the last live stream of the month. So we will be having our Zoom social meetup. So if you want to email me with the Zoom credentials, I can be happy to share the Zoom credentials. I know I got an email over the weekend I didn't respond to yet, but I'll get that sent over. But we'll also post the Zoom meetup information in next week's live stream as well. So how it works is we'll go for about 2 hours, and then after that we'll kind of migrate over to the Zoom social meetup. And it's a wonderful area to kind of meet people there on the live streams and wonderful conversations and stuff like that. Also, just a little bit of interesting little trivia. Let me see if I could have this. I just, I had keep a spreadsheet of all of the different statistics on the live stream. So just in case you're curious, since the COVID pandemic started, we have 1,581 hours, 49 minutes, and 54 seconds of tutorials. That's just a little bit shy of 66 days. We've answered 21,252 questions, and I've had 2,538,226 views as of yesterday. So with that, we will go ahead and get started answering some more questions. So let me just start looking through chat. And I'm presenting from Alexandria, Virginia, just in the United States. I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America, primarily focusing on Steinberg products. So if you're on the live stream live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. All right. So we see Peter checking in from Montreal. Thanks for joining us. And Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. We see Jazz Dude from Germany. All right. And we have Val Lee checking in from Vienna. All right. We see Uno Memento checking in from a darkening Finland. All right. And we have Jan from CubaseIndex.com checking in from Stockholm. We have Nick from Essex in the UK. We have Rich Schweitzer from a wet and soggy South Florida. Hope that you're going to be safe with the impending hurricane. Looks pretty bad. So we have Soren checking in from Sweden. Patrick Becker from Germany, Benny from Sweden as well. So we see from Soren, Greg, is there a way / key command to open and close Supervision? So it really depends on where it's actually, where it's actually loaded from. So I think if we wanted to, always have Supervision open on, let's say, the master bus, something like that. So there is, what we could do, and I think we could do this through the generic remote. So let's say if we wanted to have, make sure I'm reading it right. Okay, so say open and close Supervision. All right, so one easy way of doing this, let's say I'm going to just put it on my, let's say I have Supervision on my control room output. So let's say we have, I will come over, I don't have my presets for Supervision here, so let's say we'll just go ahead and build Okay, so let's say if I wanted this to be accessed, so, what we could do is from the menu, probably the easiest way to do this, if you always wanted this, is just to save like a global workspace. So we're going to say we'll add a workspace, and we could do this globally or part of a project. So I'll just say Supervision. Okay, so now as soon as I wanted to come over, let's say we'll close our Supervision plugin. We can now come over to the workspaces, and then we could, at this point, just click on Supervision, and we could just have that, and we could just come to set key commands for our different workspaces. So let's say this will be workspace 1. So we could just have this as option plus numeric 1. So I'll just hit, and we could just simply call up our Supervision preset. So you just kind of come right over here. So let's say now we could just open up and recall that from a workspace. So try doing a workspace, Soren, and let me know if that makes sense. All right, so when you see a question, when double clicking a new track appears, is there kind of preference for that? So let's just do, let's say, new project and do create empty. So I'll come here. So if we double click, we can create a new, and if I wanted to add an audio track, if I double click, it'll create an audio track. If I have a group track, add it, and if I double click directly below, so it looks like I think the default will be MIDI in Cubase, and the default in Nuendo will be audio. So that was one of the early on differences. But let's see if there's a preference for this. Maybe just kind of fixed. think it's going to be fixed for that's how it works. But if you wanted to switch to audio, so as soon as you have an audio track here, double clicking below, we'll just continue to add additional audio tracks. So let me know if I misunderstood that. All right, so we have John Shaman checking in from San Diego. Thanks for being on. I see further clarification usually opens a MIDI track and I want audios. So there's always, key commands for adding audio tracks. So, if you wanted to just kind of click here, we could just click on add audio track and have key commands specifically for that. But maybe if you start with an audio track, it would automatically add an audio track. So you see question, does someone have a key command template with the Ableton shortcut? So I don't think that one comes with Cubase, but there may be one floating around. But maybe you could, I would look in the Cubase Nation Discord channel and see if there's one in there. All right, so we have Zandra checking in from Belgium. Thanks for joining us. Masters Ari from Tanzania. Thanks for being here. We have Spencer B. from Atlanta. John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin, as he claims the weird coast of Lake Michigan. All right. We have Michael Pierce joining us from London. All right, so we have a question. I have Cubase 12 on a desktop and laptop. Oddly, if I open a project on laptop, the tempo shows the same but seems to play a tad faster. Is there anything that might cause this? So it could be that the laptop audio interface is maybe set to 48K and it's and the desktop is set to 44.1. So I would check to see if there is a particular sample rate mismatch and see if that would be my first guess, to look for kind of a sample rate mismatch. All right, and we have AGK checking in from Paris. Thanks for joining. All right, we see from Soren says, nice going, Greg. Workspaces is to fix. Thanks. All right. All right, let's see if I'm going to just check, make sure I'm not at the end of questions already here. Let me just hang on. You guys are getting so smart with Cubase. All right, we'll see if some more questions come in. If not, we had a couple of questions that were mailed in. All right, we'll give it just a couple minutes, and if not, I'll go to our mailed in questions. Okay, so I'll just jump to some of the mailed in questions, get those out of the way. Okay, so we had Question, any tips to get best results when using VariAudio to extract the notes from audio, typically a bass line to MIDI? I have many to do for an educational project. It picks up a lot of notes that aren't played for me and isn't really legible. I wondered maybe if EQing first at some practice like that might help. What would you recommend? All right, so they were kind enough to send a bass portion. So let me just jump here to this file. And let's go ahead and listen to it. Sounds like kind of a classic flat wound P bass kind of sound. So, and I think I may have applied some EQ on it already. So let's go ahead and just listen to it. All right, so with this, I would probably apply EQ first. And what I did is I just applied basically a high cut and low cut filter on it so we could make it. There's some notes that as we listen to this, we could actually see. Like where they let their strings off and you hear the buzz. So if we kind of just listen to it initially. So like where their thumb, it's probably their palm of their right hand is hitting the strings, you know, but that's still kind of pitched. So I'm going to try to clean that up with EQ first. So without that, let's go ahead and just go into VariAudio and we'll show what the VariAudio is going to do without the EQ. So when we want to go to our VariAudio, and you can see probably some of the low notes here. So like these notes here, this note here coming up, this red note is probably. So we have those notes just kind of ringing out. So let's go ahead and apply the EQ changes. So I'm going to just take the particular event here. Let's go to render in place. And I'm going to make sure that we have the channel EQs or the filters here enabled. So we'll render it in place and we'll just do our channel settings. Okay, and I'll try not to have it record enabled. Okay, so now we listen to it. All right, so now we will go ahead and do the render in place on this. So let's say we'll do the VariAudio editing on this. All right. So I would go through each of the segments. So let's come first, and I'm just going to correct the tuning on it. So I will take this, and we're going to correct the intonation first. And we may want to actually, I will come over here, and let's just kind of zoom in vertically with it. And we want to just kind of make sure that the segmentation is right. So I'm going to just... and we don't really know what the tempo is of the original file, but So once we come here, I'm going to go to show all smart controls. Okay, and we want to just make sure that kind of the segments and at times we may want to just kind of take this and say, okay, we'll go to kind of the very end of the section here and we'll see it turn into a glue gun and we could join those segments together. So as we listen to it, and we'll make sure that just kind of doing this right here. And we'll join this. So we'll glue those two segments and just kind of listen to it. And let's undo that and move that to that pitch. Right, and we'll join these sections here. So where we're seeing kind of the pitch change, and it could be just the strings are dead. And we'll just bring that section in. So that should give us kind of enough of a kind of a head start. So I will kind of take this and let's look at it. So kind of cleaning up the segments and applying the EQ because there's other frequencies that are going on there. We'll come over to our functions. And at this point, we will choose to extract MIDI. And I'll just create it on a new MIDI track. Okay, and let's say I will route this to Howling Sonic SE. All right, and I'll just put this on like a bass sound. And I'll just switch this up an octave. So I'll just come here to MIDI. So as we kind of, start to just kind of tweak some of the segments. Then you could easily kind of just modify some of the MIDI data to match up. But yeah, I mean, if you have the chance to, and I'll just do this with another part here on the bass. So I think kind of the recordings, I know you probably don't have control over the actual recording of what's going on with that. So, but let's come here. Let's say if I want to take this, we'll take this bass part here. So where it's kind of a better recording of it. But now if I wanted to, without even really doing much segmentation, so I'll add a MIDI part. So I think if you have a kind of a clearer tone, that would definitely help. But I'm going to add just a quick MIDI instrument. And we'll route this out to so that's both the audio and the MIDI transcription playing. So if you have kind of a clearer recording, then I think you'll be, it'll make kind of the whole process easier for pitch detection. But if you work with segments and maybe apply some EQ, that you should be in good shape. All right, let's see if we have some more questions on our live chat. I think we have some more. All right. All right, so we have a question from Brian Sawyer. Can you explain the purpose of sidechaining and give an example? So sometimes you may want particular tracks to kind of, perhaps jump out a bit. And so it's often like, okay, I want the kick drum to have a little more impact. So I want the bass to get out of the way of the kick drum. So every time that the kick drum comes in, I want the bass to be compressed so that we can actually kind of feel the kick a bit. So, and we'll often have it in kind of like EDM style music. So let's say, but that's a very typical use of it. So let's say I wanted to just make sure I'm not going to kill everyone volume wise here. So let's say I have, like, I want this kick to stand out in this particular synth sound. So what I'm going to do is to go to the synthesizer and we're going to put a compressor on it. So we go to our inserts. Let's say we have compressor, and what I want to do is to have the compressor turned on and off by another track. So it's going to be turned on and off by this kick drum. So now what we want to do is to just have kind of a heavy compression. So every time that kick drum comes in, the bass frequencies will kind of get ducked down. And you could also use this like if you're doing like a commercial and you wanted to, have backing tracks, and every time that the, voiceover announcer comes in, the other tracks go down. So they're the same exact volume. So, but now we hear how the kick drum kind of comes through a lot better. So, in the 80s, some people would take like, when the big snare drum was like king of hard rock tracks, some people would take all the instruments and, send it to a bus and sidechain the bus so that the snare would sound huge, because everything else would kind of get ducked down a bit. So that's some of the uses of sidechaining. Let me know if that makes sense, Brian. Okay, so we have a question from Eric Ross. I have a stereo channel. How can I turn it to mono quickly? Is there a plugin for that? So if you wanted to take a channel, so there's a couple of different approaches. So if we wanted to take a particular stereo source, so, it could depend on if you want it to sound mono or actually be mono. So let's say if I'm here, and we have like a stereo track, one of the things I could do is go to my project menu. And then if I wanted to convert these into mono tracks, so I could just say convert, and we'll say multi-channel to mono. And at this point, we'll just hit OK. And now what it's done, it's created our left channel and our right channel. So it's split that. Now, if we wanted to make something sound more mono, at this point, we could open up a plugin. So let's say as an insert, and I'll just go for an imager. And at this point, I'll just say, let's make it one band. And instead, we could move our width. So instead of making it sound wider, there we can make it sound mono just by adjusting like the stereo width. So if we want it to be, that's kind of where it was originally. If we wanted it to sound wider, or if you wanted to sound very mono, and we can see kind of the frequency responses here and the phase relationship. So or very wide. So if you wanted to actually change the channels to mono, go to project, select the tracks, go to project, and then go to convert tracks, multi-channel to mono. Or if you wanted to just sound mono, you could just come right over here and use like an imager plugin and change kind of the stereo width. Okay. So you just see from Mr. Morpheus, know what would be nice Cubase update VU meters on tracks. So if you wanted to, I mean, you could do that already, with the, if you wanted to, put a separate, if you want to put a separate instance of Supervision on each track, you could do that and create kind of a meter bridge. Sometimes when, the mixers are going to be much smaller, seeing VU meters, you may not, it may look as be kind of good eye candy, but may not give you that much information. So, and for a lot of different types of meters, kind of the PPM meters that we see here can be a little more accurate and kind of a little more contemporary workflows. But we've had to request before, but you can set up multiple instances of Supervision and have it all kind of laid out and create your own meter bridge if you wanted to. All right, wonderful to see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo. All right, and we have Luca on. Glad you could join us. We have Renee joining us as well. Okay, so we just see question. Sir, I can't open Scale Assistant in VariAudio, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. So this was something that was added for version 12. So let's come over here. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to go to my vocals, and I'm in VariAudio here. Okay, so make sure that you go to the Scale Assistant. So at this point, we could just say, I want to, it's determined that we're probably in the key of A. So at this point, we could see this in the scale assistant. And if you have version 11 or earlier, that's not going to have a scale assistant function. So now we could choose to quantize pitches to the scale. So I just click here, we could quantize pitches if we wanted to. So if you wanted to do that, so make sure that you'll see in version 12, just when you look at it here, you'll see the scale assistant. And it should be right there. And you could have this automatically colorized by scale. But if you're in version earlier than version 12, it's not going to be there. But you could update using the 40% off coupon for the current promotion. So. Okay. Okay, so we see from El Cortito Feo says, hi, automation right on touch mode doesn't work since 11 version. There is a way to do this. I have to put a dot at the end line, so it's uncomfortable. I have version 12 now. Okay, so let's say if I'm here. So say I want to take my lead vocal. So I don't think I have any automation here. Okay, so let's say if we put it into touch mode, and I'll just select my fader here. So I'm going to enable automation. You look my way and your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you called me to. All right, so some people will say, okay, you know, if we move our fader, and as we do this, so we see the automation go. It caught my breath while you called me to. So at that point, it's going to maintain. Let's say I move my fader up here. It's going to stay at that value because that's where the last automation is. So when doing automation, what some people will do, as was mentioned, is maybe put a little return dot here. So as I wanted to, let's say, write automation, if we have a return dot, like a return value. We recall the day we first met. That was a long, and I'm in touch mode. Time ago. It has a value to return to. So, but otherwise, if there's no kind of return, if there's no dot after, it's just like a physical console where, you know, if there's no dots here. And so just like think of moving a physical fader. If I move this, it's going to stay at that value because there's no other value for it to return to. Now, what some people do as they're doing automation now is just select kind of the range tool. So if you say, okay, I want that to be louder, I want this word to be softer, you know, we could just say, okay, like here's a breath. I want to take that breath and turn this on, and I want that down. That we could just select particular ranges and bump it up. But, you know, if there's no, if there's no physical value for it to return to, you know, what would you expect it to return to? So if so at that point, if you want it to do little touch-ups, consider just, doing this easily enough, or just, and that's why there is a, right to end function in the automation panel. But, you know, if you move a fader, it's not going to automatically return to the previous value. That's not what touch automation does. It's, you know, think of it like a physical fader. So, and it will stay there until it sees another value to go to. So I think that makes sense. All right, so you see Michael Pierce. Just thinking about it, remember you can sidechain effect sends too. That could be very handy to get a reverb or delay out of the way, just for giggles. So, yeah, a lot of people do that. All right, and we have Mike Rivera. I think he's from San Antonio, if memory serves. So thanks for joining us. All right, we see from Brian Sawyer. Yes, as usual, Greg, your answer helped a lot. On, I guess I was with the sidechaining. All right. All right, we have a question from Eric Ross. We just see, what is the fastest way to get audio with effects on a single track rendered onto a WAV file? Is there a hotkey that could do this and send it to a folder on my desktop? All right, so there's a number of different approaches for this. So, okay, so on a single track, what I would do is, you know, if I wanted to put, let's say, a delay
I'm so in love
on the
with
vocal
you,
here.
just like a long, long time ago.
So let's say right at the end of that phrase, what I could do is I'm going to just select this. And if you hit F7, this will open up the direct offline processing. We could also do this from audio to plugins. But I'm just going to come here and let's say I just want to put like a delay. So I'll put a mono delay. And let's say, okay, I want this to be a half note delay. So now as I listen to it.
Long time ago.
And let's say, oh, I don't like that. So what I could do is just say, okay, I want a dotted quarter note delay. So, and I want the mix to be a little less. So every time I make a change here, that's just embedding it into the file.
Oh, I remember the day.
So say I want to change the feedback. So that's a really easy way of just applying effects to a particular thing, to a particular single track. So you don't have to put it into a folder. You could just, again, and then even after you saved a project, you could delete all of the processing. But if you wanted to just come here, so you hit F7, you know, so whatever that you have selected here, or you could just say, okay, I want this phrase to be flanged. Right there, so I'm going to select it, go to audio, go to plugins, and say, okay, I wanted this to be, we'll go to modulation, and let's put a flanger on it. So now when I play it back, if I have auto apply turned on, it's automatically applied that.
Well, even now, I'm so in love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
And if you select the entire file, you could do that as well. Now, if you have plugins, so let's say I'll come here, and if I don't open the video window, you know, if I wanted to apply like individual processes to that, we could have chains as well. But if I wanted to take like all of my inserts, so let's say, okay, I wanted to come here, and, you know, I wanted to apply different overall inserts here. So let's say, okay, I want it. At that point, what I could do is select the event. So let's say if I wanted to do inserts, EQs, and I wanted to embed that, I could go to the edit menu, and then we would just choose to render in place, and we go to our render settings, we could choose to have it dry channel settings, which is going to be EQs, inserts, the channel strip, or if I wanted to add, my effects ends or effects ends and the master effects, we could basically render the file with all of those different settings embedded, and that would include automation as well. So at that point, you could just render in place and take kind of the entire file, process it with all of your effects. We could have it, the track muted automatically by default, or you could have it disabled or remove the original track. So now at this point, you could just do kind of, a render in place function as well. So let me know if that makes sense for your different workflows. Revert this song so I don't destroy it. So my friend Wayne did it, and today's his birthday. So if he's watching, happy birthday, Wayne. All right. So let's move on to the next question. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you learned something, make sure you do hit the like button. All right, so we have just a suggestion from Jazz Dude. Please show the different views in the meter bridge in the mixer and how to activate it. All right, so let's say we are in our mix console here. Let's go to F3. I'll bring this down. All right, so if we want to right click, one of the cool things is for audio tracks is you could have wave meters or traditional PPM meters, so we can see exactly when tracks are coming, like our background vocals. Or we could choose to have these be PPM, and when we want to also do this, we could choose to hold the peaks or not. So if we don't want to see our peaks, we could also change the metering position from input. So that's what the input was. And then as we apply like post fader, or if we wanted to be post panner as well. And when we want to, so those are the different channel meter settings. When we go to our meter settings here on the master bus, at this point we could choose to look at digital scale, DIN, European Broadcast Union, EBU, British Nordic, CAT System 20, 14, 12, +3, +6, or +12 dB digital scale. Or if we click on the loudness meter here, we can see our entire loudness meter settings as well for the project. So those are some of the different metering options. All right. All right, so we see from Michael Pierce says, I don't know what people think, but other DAWs show compression alongside the output level of a channel. I rather like that. Not that I use it a lot, but it's a handy reminder. Yeah, so sometimes, people have kickback meters, but sometimes those only work with, particular plugins, and it's hard to have it be consistent for all third-party plugins. So... All right. All right. So we see from says lots of love to you, Greg. I have a question: how to limit without losing too much dynamic range and yet get a solid signal, say minus 11 LUFS. One approach to do it is, a lot of people are always kind of fighting in the mix console to do this. But, another approach to it could be, and is once you have the mixed file, so I see people kind of going crazy, trying to get their mix perfect. I'm like, kind of get it in the ballpark, because what you could do is take the file and, one tactic that often works well is just to come over here and go to processes, select the event, let's say your final mix down, and then go to normalize. And, it used to be that we could only do it in dB, but now I can say, okay, I want this to minus 23 LUFS, or I want this to minus 11 LUFS. So at this point, you could just type in particular values. So I want it to be, minus 14 LUFS. So this could take a lot of the guesswork out, and you could just really kind of optimize it for particular streaming services there. So give that a try. Just, take your mix down process, and you can do this in Wavelab or do this entirely inside of Cubase as well, and see how that affects your dynamic range. So, and I'll go ahead and just remove this, but that could save you a lot of time. See, Michael Pierce just commenting to John Costigan, is there anything called too much reverb? It's like too much compression, eye of the beholder. So I think some tracks in the 80s might disagree with you on too much reverb. So. Okay, so we have a question. I have an Alesis V61 controller. I appreciate it if you could tell me how to do the MIDI mapping for it. All right, so let's say if we want to do like MIDI remote, let me just come over here and I'll just kind of start from scratch. So let me just... All right, so let's say I want to do, let's say I have a Nectar controller and I want to create a new MIDI remote for it. So we'll say, okay, so, and it's a P4. All right, the script creator will be carried over from your administrator name. You want to choose the correct MIDI in and out ports. And now we want to create a surface. So I want to add knobs. So I'll just add a couple of knobs here. So I'm going to select what type of parameter that I want. And now all I have to do is just move the knobs, and we can see that it's automatically populated. Okay, so now I want to move this knob. I'll do my bottom row of knobs. All right, so now I want to have like a trigger pad. So I'm going to have, I think, 12. And if we wanted to make these larger, we could make them larger visually. So let's say I'm just hitting the pads on my controller. All right, and we're just getting them aligned here. Okay, and let's say I wanted to have buttons, let's say for transport. Okay, I want these maybe to be a little smaller. All right, so now we have kind of like let's say the physical layout of our device. We can now come over here to mapping assistant. So when I hit play, I can now map this particular function. So let's say I hit the play button. So now what I could do is just right click on the function. So a lot of functions I could just say, oh, let's assign that. And I say apply mapping. And now my play button is automatically mapped to the particular parameter. Let's touch one of my knobs here. So I want to, so now that we have kind of the physical layout of our keyboard, I could come over to the mapping assistant and say, okay, I wanted this to be quick controls. So I could just double click, again, just select the parameter, just move the knob on my controller. It's selected here, assign the parameter. Okay, so let's move knob number 3. That'll be quick control 3. And knob 4, quick control 4. So again, move 5. Six, 7, so we could assign these. Now, if I wanted this to open up the mix console, all I would have to do is just come over here and say, okay, I want this to go to key commands. Let's say devices, mixer 1. And that's now assigned to this. Every time I would close this particular button, now I hit that pad, that opens and closes my mix console. The play button automatically is playing the different devices. So you could custom configure the functions. So what you want to do is in this mode, kind of define the physical controls of your controller, and then go into, right clicking and say pick up for MIDI remote mapping once you have a device selected. So I can say, okay, I want to take this knob here, select this knob, and this is going to be my control room volume. And then all you'd have to do is just say, okay, we're going to select this function, pick up for MIDI remote, and apply the mapping. And now this knob is going to just control my actual control room volume as it's moved. So that's how you could set up the new MIDI remote system. And you can do it for multiple devices. And, it's incredibly flexible with that. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to hide automation lanes? For some reason, when I click on a track, it keeps opening all of the track's automation lanes. So it's probably if you go to project menu to automation panel or hit F6. And at this point, you could just say, hide all automation lanes. So just do that. And it's probably, it could be like as you might have this kind of, let's see. So just try doing the hide automation. So F6. So, and go to automation panel, and you could just click on hide all. So do that right there. Nick just saying too much reverb, send the reverb tail to a delay. So, and then you could put a reverb on a delay again. So, all right. So we have Jason Sykes checking in from South Shields, England. All right. So we have a question from Lionel Thomas. Is there any visual cues about sections of an event where direct offline processing effects are applied? Okay, so I don't think it's on particular events, but let me just. But let's say I'll just do a quick, turn my snap off here. All right, so when you see this little icon in the upper right hand, so let's say if I undo that function, so we can see right now that this is in musical mode, but let's say if I go directly, so it doesn't indicate like which portions of the file are selected, but you can see if there is offline processing on the particular event. So let's say, again, I take the selection, go to my audio, and if we watch the upper right-hand corner, we could see what, I'll reverse the audio. So we see that this little play, so we can see the icon here changed, indicating that there is processing on. If if we're in the sample editor for the event, or let's say, if we go to F7, we could see, so let's say if I come and on this part, I want it to silence. So it doesn't really indicate exactly what's going on, but you could, just very easily undo it. So if you wanted to delete all, we could do that, but you could see, while it doesn't show exactly what process has carried on, you can see that there has been processing applied to the event. All right, wonderful to see Jeff Davis, longtime friend and former Steinberg employee, and ran our customer support division so well for a number of years and a survivor of multiple acquisitions. So wonderful to see Jeff Davis on the live stream. Thanks for being here. I know Jeff, maybe 20 years. Miss working with Jeff. All right, so we see some more discussion of VU and PPM meters. It says, and we see Michael Pierce says, I remember the old Mackie 8 bus had a rather expensive add-on of an LED meter bridge, optional. Hilarious. I believe they were worth quite a bit, so yeah, it was expensive. I think it was like $1,200. All right, we see that people are anxious for Michael Pierce's soup recipes. All right, so we see from Nuru, please some help me with Wave version 13. So if it's I'm not sure if it's Waves plugins or, but maybe if you could specify some more information. I don't have any Waves plugins, any licenses. I'm waiting for my licenses to get updated from 20 years ago, 17 years ago or so. And they never sent the email. See, Michael Pierce just saying many BBC sound engineers would refer to the VU meter as virtually useless meter. All All right, so we see from Nuru, Amory, if you have Wave 13 link, please help me. So yeah, I mean, you could check with Waves if you're looking for Waves plugin. So you could go to their website and purchase it, or purchase it from one of their authorized dealers. All right, wonderful to see Matt Elston on from UK. All right, so we have a question from Peter K. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to slow the whole track down, varispeed, like we did with tape machines? So there's two ways of doing it. So there's kind of varispeed, and we could change. Varispeed changes as we slow down the tape. It affects the pitch. So if let's say if we have different tracks, let's say in musical mode. So let's say if I'll come here to like a multi-track project. Okay, so I have all of my tracks here selected, and I can see that they're all in musical mode, and we have the algorithm set to time. So right now, if I'm playing back my track, we're at 100 beats a minute, and I want this to be like 92 beats a minute. Everything slows down. So the pitch is the same. So as I slow down, we can maintain the pitch. Or if we speed up, the pitch will stay the same. But if we want it to behave like an analog tape machine, like for varispeed, what we would do is to select all of the events. And as we do this, we switch the algorithm from time to tape. So as we play back our project now and I start slowing it down, it's going to change the pitch as well as the speed together. So I speed it up. So let's say there's our 100 beats a minute, or origin tempo. I speed it up. So that way you could do varispeed recording. And that would alter the pitch with the speed, just like an analog tape deck. Okay, so we just see a quick question. Between my mix and a reference on iMac and Cubase 12, I repeat all the steps to use this chip, and there is simply no reference sound. Where am I being stupid? So I'm not sure how you're doing the reference, but what I would do for a reference track, let me see if I have this open in my recent. Okay, I'll just show you how to work with a reference track. So I'll take this 7 Crossing song. Okay, so let's say I have let's say kind of a whole project going on. All right, so let's say I wanted to use a reference track for the mix. Like here we have a quick track, and let's say I just wanted to use another track just as kind of a reference and make that work so I could switch back and forth. Now, the reason that we want to set up kind of a reference track in a different way is we may have processing going on our master channel. So that's pretty typical. And then we compare it to a mastered reference track. We may want to make sure that, you know, the mastered reference track isn't getting processed through this particular chain of effects and processing, because then it's just kind of, it makes the whole reference point kind of, you know, useless at that point. So what we want to do is I'm going to take this and I'll just have this as kind of an obnoxious EQ. All right, so I'm going to take this track, and instead of routing it to the stereo output, I'm going to choose no bus. I'm going to go to my audio connections, and we're going to go to control room, and we're going to create a Q mix. Okay, so we'll just create a Q mix. And once we have a Q mix, like I have one here set for vocals, guitars, bass, drums, and we'll just call this reference. All right, so what we will do now is take this track that we have our reference track on, and we're going to go to the Q sensor. Right now it's not going anywhere, but I'm going to turn it on to go to the Q mix here. So we could listen to our different Q mixes. So as we play back our project, all right, so we don't hear that soloed. So I hear everything. Unmute this. Now when I click on C1, and some reason it's not working for me right now. Let me just choose no bus. All right. I'm just going to check my Q mix here, my connections. I'm just going to try it on a different Q mix, see if I... All right, so say, I'm not sure why it didn't work, but this is now only listening to this channel. So if I wanted to now listen to the mix, so let's say that's my reference track that's not going through my master fader. And now I could listen to the mix. And that way, you know, this is not going out through the main bus, but it's going out through the Q mix. And then as we listen to the Q mix, this audio is not going through your master chain processor. So give that a try. All right, so we see hi Greg from Slovenia. Is the song Beatles and Stones available on YouTube? So I don't think so, other than probably in my used frequently on my live streams. And the reason I kind of use it is because I don't want to get kind of like, you know, a message from YouTube saying they're going to run advertisements. So a lot of my songs aren't released that I use for demos for that purposes, because otherwise YouTube will run ads. You know, for a copyright infringement, they have like very proactive algorithms for that. But I believe that Sable Winters, who's often on the actual live stream, is working on a version of that. So we're all looking forward to Sable Winters' version of Beatles and Stones. All right. So we have a question from Sweden here. I got a Mackie control surface connected via USB. If I forget to turn it on before Cubase is booted, it won't connect to. Can I prompt Cubase to find it even after booting? So generally, you know, I think it came in Cubase 8.5. It used to be that you could hot swap, you know, different MIDI drivers on Mac OS, but not Windows until version 8.5. And then I believe it was Cubase 8.5 where that could accept the particular MIDI interface that was added afterwards. So it should automatically be recognized. You may have to go in, you know, if you booted Cubase and it turned on. I don't have a Mackie control, but let's say if we go to our Mackie control, and if it was assigned, you might have to physically come over here and reset the MIDI input and output ports if it wasn't physically connected during that process, like when it scanned the system. But you shouldn't have to restart Cubase, but you know, just check here in your Mackie control to make sure that these are being set to the correct destination. Okay. All right, so we see what's going on about the upgrade to 12 ELE just before the sale. Still on the fence about getting Pro. So I think it's a wonderful time to jump up to Cubase Pro. Not only do you get 40% off of the upgrade from Cubase 12 LE to Pro, but you also get 5 additional plugins when you do that. So you'll get vouchers, and that's going on through that promotion is going on through October 3rd. So make sure that you're taking advantage of that. So it's a wonderful time to upgrade from, I just see Jazz Dude just mentioning GoPro if you're serious about music production. I think, you know, by the time you often, you know, many people will spend, you know, may get a lighter version of Cubase, and then to get the functionality and features that they want, may spend thousands of dollars in third-party tools that kind of come standard with Cubase. So, you know, often upgrading to Cubase, especially when it's on promotion, is, you know, a really good investment to make and could save you a lot of money in not having to purchase unnecessary third-party tools that, you know, don't have the same level of integration. All right, let's go back to our next question that was mailed in. Okay, and this kind of for Jan had kind of mailed this in again, so I'll just start with a new project here. So we get this, and this is kind of about the tempo track changing when adding a signature track. So it just says, in my template, I have a signature track, but not a tempo track. If you activate the tempo icon at the bottom of the screen at the left, to the left at time code, the tempo will be set to tempo track value. It has last time it was used in any project. Note that tempo track is still and will never not be loaded into my, is still and never not loaded into my project. The easiest way to create this is as follows. All right. So I'm going to just turn off my tempo value here. Or let's say I'm going to set my tempo value here to 88 beats a minute with my tempo. And let's say I want to, for my non-tempo track, I'm going to put this also to 88 beats a minute. So now it says, okay, the easiest way to create is to create this, to recreate this issue as follows. Load a signature track. So I'm going to load a signature track. Okay. Okay, and it says activate the tempo icon. Click on the tempo icon at the bottom of the screen. So since I set the static value of the tempo track to 88 beats a minute, and I set it here, it's going to automatically follow. So if this was default to 120, so I could enter in kind of two values. So I could have one tempo set here of the tempo track and another value of just a static tempo not following the tempo track. So it says load a signature track, activate the tempo track. So let's say where this is originally 88 beats a minute. And it says activate the tempo icon and tempo, and it says tempo will now change if it doesn't disable the tempo icon, and change tempo to another value. All right. And then, so let's say I want this to be 108. All right. So if we turn this on, it goes back to the original value of the non-tempo tracks, our static tempo value, we'll call it, at 88 beats a minute. Turn it on, 108. So, you know, so it's almost like two independent tempos. So we have, when this is activated, our tempo track. And let me just add it here so we could see. So we have the tempo track value, and we could think of it as a static tempo value. So we could have those be the same or have those be independent. All right, let me go back to our live questions. Thanks for all the great questions. All right. All right, so we see from 240 dB Prisms, says I got Cubase Pro 12, I got Melodyne Essentials as well, so awesome. So yeah, it's a great promotion. All right, so we just see, thanks. Wondering if there's a way to use my video editor control Tourbox Neo as a controller for different effects. I want to use the dials. So if the box will transmit MIDI CC messages, you could have it automatically do the MIDI CC messages and control Cubase via using, like, you know, quick controls here. So we could, you know, control that. Some other boxes may work where if you have a plugin parameter, and depending on the plugin itself. So I'll just add a quick audio track here. Like where some parameters will automatically be controlled by the mouse wheel. So, you know, if the box is where, you know, if the box is, a lot of controllers may mimic like the mouse scroll wheel to control different parameters. And if that's the case, many plug-in parameters of instruments can automatically respond to that. So say if I open up like a retro log, doesn't like that. All right, I'll just try it one more time. I'll just add a Hallian Sonic here quickly. That many different instrument parameters will automatically be controlled. So let's say if we come over here to edit, that you could use like the mouse scroll wheel. So if the controllers actually transmit MIDI CCs, that's the best choice. But if it works with dealing with emulating a mouse scroll wheel, which many controllers do, then you could also use that. All right, we have Daniel checking in from Munich, Germany. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have Travel Launch, says just bought Cubase 12 Pro a week ago, and it's great, highly recommend. So it's wonderful. Welcome to the Cubase 12 family, and thanks for being on the live stream today. All right, we have Tiago checking in from Brazil. All right, so we see how do you transfer Cubase from an old computer to a new computer? So if you're on version 12, you may go, you could have Cubase activated on up to 3 computers. So you could install it on your new computer. Previous versions, if you had like a USB-E licenser, it's literally just installing. So version 11 and earlier, that was e-licenser based. You could just take the USB e-licenser key and move that from one computer to another computer. And if you have all of your user settings, probably the easiest way to do that is if you go to the edit menu and go to the profile manager. And at this point, you'll see in the profile manager that you could export a profile from one computer. Like I did this when I migrated from my previous, like I just got a new MacBook Pro from work. So I had an i9 and now have an M1. So I just exported all of my profile settings, which is all my user settings for the most part, from my old computer, and I just imported it. And that's the profile that I'm using here on this computer. So all the settings you can export from directly from your old machine and then import into the new machine. With version 12, what you could do if you don't want to use the previous computer, you could go into the Steinberg Activation Manager and deactivate it on your old computer, and then you have up to 3, authorizations or activations. So with the new system, then you could, let's say, take your new computer and activate it there. So, but, let me know if you have any other further questions. But all the settings will just basically, do the profile manager, and that should kind of carry everything over for you, all your user settings. All right, so you just see from Michael Pierce, just says, just wondered if you managed to listen to my Columbo style mix track and replicate the problem I had. No worries if not. So I have some time set aside tomorrow for that, Michael. So just kind of got slammed with some work stuff yesterday and this morning. So I should have time to start playing with the track tomorrow morning after I get all the indexing done for tonight's live stream. So we see Graham Witcher just mentioning there's some, I guess, about the controller keyboard. Graham's just mentioned is a great point to reiterate. Some controller keyboards don't work when connected to a USB hub, yet work no problem connected directly to USB 2. So sometimes it could depend on the hub itself, if the hub is powered, and if you're drawing too much electricity from the USB port, sometimes it may not be recognized. So that's a great point. Okay, so we see from King Drew 562 says, okay, thank you, no worries if you're busy. I'm sorry, that was Michael Pierce's comment. Says that King Drew 562 about migrating. He says, I have the key and I'll check YouTube for that information. Yeah, so if you have the key, it's literally just taking, you could run your Cubase on as many computer, you'd have your Cubase installed and the license is just on the USB-E licenser. All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas on the live stream. Thanks for joining us today. Now we'll know that we'll have virtual ice cream starting. All right, let me go to another question. All right, those mailed in. All right, so the question is, if I have a bunch of MIDI parts and he had sent a picture and I want to delete, as you can see in the MIDI editor window, I just want to delete the last 4 notes as you see highlighted. How can I make it delete on every MIDI event that I have for that track? Is there some kind of quick link that I can make edits that will affect every event on that track? Or is there another way? Thank you. All right, so let me just jump to a particular project here. All right, I'll just revert. I sometimes feel like the revert function is for me doing demos only. All right. So let's say I have, so this is kind of like how to apply edits, you know, like one part that's maybe copied a bunch of times and to apply that edit to all of the copies. So if we do this, there's a concept called shared copies. So, you know, it may make sense to do. So when we copy an event, I'm just holding down the Alt or Option key. So these are 2 independent events. So if I do an edit and delete notes here, we can see that the notes were deleted, but not necessarily in the original event. So how can we kind of copy events so that when we edit the original event, that it's automatically, when we edit one of the events, it's applied to all of the events. So generally, to copy particular events, hold down the Alt or Option key. But if I hold down the Alt or Option key plus the Shift key, we'll see that we get these 2 horizontal lines in the upper right-hand corner. And this indicates that it's a shared event. So again, Alt or Option plus the Shift key before releasing. Or we could say, I think it's Control K. And then we have this concept of shared copies. So I could just take that event and we're going to copy it a couple of times. So now I have all these events. So when we see that they are set for shared copies, when I double click and let's say I create these notes and I just now want to change the pitch, that they will change across all of the parts. So make sure that you're working with shared copies. And then anytime that we do an edit change, we could just come right here and we'll see those changes apply to all the parts so that we don't have to do it one by one by one by one by one. So again, just hit Control or Command plus the letter K. And then there's the shared copies. Or as you're making an event copy, hold down the Alt or Option plus the Shift key. and that will make a shared copy for you. All right, let me just go back to live questions. All right, so we see King Drew 562 just subscribed to the channel. Thanks so much. No, thanks for subscribing, and we hope to see you on more live streams in the future. All right, everyone's happy to see Michael Teams waiting. They're salivating for their virtual ice creams. All right, so we see question. When saving VST presets, for instance, from Retrolog, is there a way to save the preset in a specific folder in my computer folder system, PC, directly from Cubase? So generally, it wants to keep user presets so that they're always available. So that's the concept. And sometimes we would have this before and people would save it into different folders or save it to like as a USB thumb drive, and then they open up the project, and then if that drive wasn't connected, that the preset couldn't be recalled and the project couldn't be recalled. So we want to try to take as many obstacles out of the workflow so that, you know, projects don't open up the same exact way every time. So to quickly find presets, so let's say if I come in to my Hallian Sonic here and I have, all right, so let's say I'm adjusting all right, so say I've messed up a perfectly good patch and I wanted to save this as a preset. So when I come here, I'm going to save preset. We'll call it September 27th, 2022. Okay, so if you wanted to archive all your presets, it's easy to do. So let's go to your media bay, and we can see that we'll go to user presets. And we'll see VST3 presets. And let's say, okay, I want to go to Hallian Sonic SE. And I'll just rescan this. So, but now if I wanted to just simply, you know, be able to access them, and I'll do all media types here. So, but if you want to at this point to copy it for archival purposes, you could just click on Reveal in Finder, and then we could see the different presets. So, but this way, Cubase knows where to look for user-created presets and knows where to look for factory presets, and it's going to be constant. And we see the same philosophy for VST plugins. With VST2, they could be installed everywhere, and people can't find their plugins after installing in different companies, would install it to different default locations, which is fine, but then people wouldn't be able to find it and get all frustrated because there's kind of too much opportunity for problems to be created in files not being found. So just, you know, go to, again, your media bay, and then just come over here to user presets, and you could just right click and reveal in Finder. And then, you know, at this point you could see all of you. If you wanted to back that up to a different location, you could do that. But it, you know, ideally it wants to know exactly where to find all user created presets so that your project can be opened. You know, it's kind of a big philosophical thing, you know, of having the project open in the same state that it was as much as possible. Okay. So we see from Endred says, F it, I'm going to buy it. I don't have kids, so why not? That's a great attitude. Love it. Even if you have kids, you could buy it. It's a good investment for your future. All right. All right, so we have a question from Soren. A friend of mine claims that the brick wall limiter limiting the true peaks to -1 when going true peaks to -1 when going above changes the sound of the file, makes it squashed and pressed together. Do you also hear? Let's give it a try. All right, so we'll do new project. All right, and I'll just all right, I'm just going to turn my control room down. And I'll just record a quick sine wave. All right, or yeah, we'll do a sine wave. Okay, so let's say we have sine wave here. Okay, and our sine wave's at -12. I'll just cut off my input channel here. All right, so we're at -12 dB. Okay, so so a friend of mine claims that the brick wall limiter is limiting the true peaks to -1 when going above, changes the sound of the file, makes it sound squashed and pressed together. Do you also hear? So let's come over here. I'm just going to put this on, let's put on the channel itself. All right, so let's say we put it at -1. All right, and we have that just at the end, just at the end of the file as it loops. All right, we'll put this on. So say -0.1. All right, so there's -1. And let's go up. Let's say to 0. So sounds like it's doing what it should. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's squashing or changing it. So it's always, test tone generators are always good for these types of situations. So see if your friend gets the same results when just running just a straight known level of an oscillator. All right, we see Michael Teams is on the case with Virtual Ice Cream. We see Graham Witcher still is saying, still listening to Prometheus 1. I'm going to play some tracks to friends later in the week. It's part of a Guess Who This Band Is. I'm sure they'll be impressed. All right, and Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of limoncello ice cream. Thank you so much. I just like the word limoncello. So being a bass player and playing in orchestras with all my cello playing comrades. Okay, so we see, what do you recommend, question, if when I always change audio device with ASIO all, I guess ASIO for all, and I put my output where I want it, it does not give me sound. So I don't, check, it could be when you come to, and I'm on Mac, so I don't have ASIO for all. But let's say, when you go to the control panel, you may see something that is, where you could set, in the control panel app for ASIO for all, you could turn on and choose what output it's being, what device, because it's basically just an ASIO driver, like a wrapper for Windows multimedia drivers. So, but that could be routed out to, not only the built-in sound card, but if you have an HDMI connection, it could be routed out to those things. And depending what device it's being routed out to, let's say if you're doing a project at 96K and the audio interface doesn't support that, it's like the built-in audio hardware on a Mac, for instance, I don't think it does 88.2. It'll do 44.1, 48K, 96K, but it won't do 88.2. So make sure that the sample rate is also capable of playing out of the device. Sometimes you may see a little setting for, release driver when application is in the background to check that. Some, like on my i9 MacBook Pro, when I ran it on the Windows side, you'd have to really dig into their particular sound driver through like multiple stages to find something similar in their particular control panel for the audio interface. So it could be something like that as well. But if you could let us know which audio interface, if it's just like a built-in audio or if it's being routed out of an HDMI port. So sometimes it may be routed out to an HDMI port for a monitor. Like I have a nice Dell 27-inch monitor in front of me, but it doesn't have speakers. So sometimes audio gets routed out through the HDMI to the Dell. And if I connect an audio output from the audio out of the display monitor, that's taking like the analog out of the from being extracted from the HDMI port. So it should be easier, but sometimes HDMI connections can make it more challenging with routing. But if you have a dedicated ASIO driver, that's always the best solution. Okay, so we see, wondering if Cubase would work well for live performance. I don't want to learn Ableton Live. So we have lots of people using Cubase for live performance. Probably the most comprehensive tour I've ever seen is the Hans Zimmer Live. And Hans called it, Cubase the 19th member of the band because it was, they were playing all their virtual instruments and their custom sample libraries all through Cubase. So there's no problem doing that. One other thing to check out, if depending on your level of live production, like if you're just kind of playing back tracks, obviously Cubase could do that. But if you wanted to control lighting and feed up to 6 different video sources out and have the lyrics scroll and have the chord scroll, there's a program that Steinberg released called VST Live. So check that out as well. And then you could take your Cubase project, import it into VST Live or your VST Live project and import that into Cubase as well. So if you're doing kind of like a full-fledged Broadway show type of thing, then VST Live is great. But, if you're just playing backing tracks, Cubase would, lots of people are using Cubase for live situations without any problems. All right, so we have a question from Soren. I came across a task of creating more dynamic velocities for my hi-hat. The problem were that the drums were all made in Beat Designer programming. Is there an easy way to get 90 through 127 velocity? All right, so let's jump over here. All right, let's see if I may have Beat Designer active. All right, so let's say I'm all right, so I'll just do, let's say, new pattern here. So let's say, okay, I just want to take my hi-hat. I'll make it a little louder so we can all hear it. All right, so if you want to do it in Beat Designer, if you just come directly on the note itself, so you can say, okay, I want it like every other one. So I'm just holding down the particular notes. And then moving, so I think it defaults to like 80, looks like. But we could just kind of adjust velocity according here. So you could get your different dynamics. So let me just make sure. And let's say, if we at this point want to, and you say the problem is all the drums are made in Beat Designer programming. Is there an easy way to get 90 to 127 velocity? So let's say at this point I want to insert the pattern. I'll just move my cursor back here. So I'll just say insert the pattern at cursor position. All right, so so if we want to now just select our hi-hat, and select the notes, we could compress or expand just like that. So you can make it louder, or if you wanted more dynamics, just go to the center edge on the right here, and you could increase kind of the dynamic range as well. So if we want to just play, and so if I wanted them more same or more dynamic, and it could depend on the source how well it responds to velocity, but you could do that once you have it in an event as well. But you could also just change it directly inside of the Beat Designer just by adjusting vertically on the notes. So let me know if that helps, Soren. All right, so we see Andrew just for his live performance is just says busking with V drums and the bass guitar connecting to a laptop. So yeah, you could definitely do that. So just have your V drums connected directly to like an instrument here. So let's say, if you want your V drums connected to something like Groove Agent, and as you go to add an audio track, you could just, input monitor the bass. And if you want it to have more capabilities, if you want to have more tonal capabilities under distortion, go to the VST bass amp. And this is like a great classic Ampeg tone, which I'm very fond of as a bass player. So you could adjust that, and you could just have those two tracks in record enable, and you could be playing MIDI and playing the audio directly right there. Okay, so we see King Drew 562 says we'll be tuning in for sure to the live streams. Cubase came free with the interface, so I'm learning it from scratch. Pray for me. So just have fun and have, enjoy and record some great music. See, Michael Teams is going to be trying new things he's never contemplated before, including drum loops, atmosphere, keyboard sounds. Woohoo. All right. It's always fun. Think of it like just getting a new monster pedal for your guitar. So Graham Witcher just says, wouldn't it be fantastic to have a Cubase users music track compilation album? We all produce different genres, styles of music. I'm sure it would be great to hear our fellow Cubase friends. So yeah, maybe we could, have a Club Cubase Spotify list that people could upload to or something. So that's a great idea, Graham. Thanks for sharing it. All right, we have Cuba checking in from South Africa. Thanks for being there. All right, and Spike Williams checking in from Wales. Okay, reading through comments. So we all had to make sure Nick doesn't fall asleep again today. So, okay, so we have a question from Jazzy Lamel. Hey, Greg, question. I have some files that was done in Cubase 5 that a client needs, but they won't open up. I keep getting an error. Can you help? So I'm not sure if it was, there's two different versions of Cubase 5 when it came out, like 2005-ish, I think 2005, 2006-ish. So those files should automatically open up. It's the same file format. If it was, there was a VST5, which came out on kind of the older code base. So if it's like a .all or .arr file, you may have to download Cubase SX3 and open up the files there and save it. But if it was a Cubase 5, like it's kind of it kind of started off as SX and then had migrated just to Cubase 5. So if it was Cubase 5, those file types should work, and maybe it's particular plugins that are being referenced. But if you want to try to send a file to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'd be happy to see if I could get the file open. But sometimes it could be that particular plugins are being used, or it's looking for a rewire that doesn't exist, stuff like that. So but as Jazz Dude mentions, if you have the USB dongle, just download Cubase 5 or 6 and open it as well. You see that Michael Teams' birthday is in 2 days, so everyone will have to do a special happy birthday sing along for Michael Teams' belated birthday on the Zoom meetup on Friday. So happy birthday in advance, Michael. All right, so we have a question from Tiago. I'm thinking about buying a used RT2. Is it possible to transfer this hardware registration to my account? I'm not sure, I know that there used to be, I'm not sure what the only thing that really needs to be transferred would be the built-in plugins. So I'm not sure if the person you're buying from has installed like the native versions of the the Yamaha RevX Reverb, or has installed like the Guitar Amp Classics and a Morphing channel strip. But if they haven't installed that, I don't think that there's any consequences to doing that. And if they have installed it, if you meet up with the person, you could transfer the license to your e-licenser as well and have access. But I would check to see if there's any transfer, but I don't think that there's really any consequences other than maybe the included native plugins not working. Everything else could be downloaded without issue. But you could check to see if it's mentioned on the Steinberg website. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Ely on the live stream. And just for Tiago, the URT2 is a wonderful interface. So that comes with the Rupert Neve transformer. So we see from Endred, nice bass amp. I used a VST Amp Rack Tweed for bass, but didn't know this was in Pro. Yeah, so definitely check out the VST bass amp if you haven't played around with that. See, Kuba is just saying he loves Beat Designer and Groove Agent. Nick is saying Pigments plus FX Modulator equals hours of pleasure. All right. So Heartbreak Time Machine is just wondering, does anyone else keep Cubase open during the stream and try stuff in real time? So I do. So I just see from Endred, where's your boss so I can email him to give you a raise? So yeah, if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'd be happy to give you my boss's email. So I'd be happy to accept a raise. So as most people are, I'm sure. All right, we see that Nick is wide awake today, so that's good. He's drinking coffee, but he can't say he's drinking coffee, so that's good. All right. Hi, Greg. So we have a question. It says, "Hi, Greg. Thanks for all the answers. One, is there a way to make Cubase play the third interval of the scale? For example, on C major scale, when I play the note C, Cubase will auto add the note E." All right. So let's say I'll come. I think we could do that. Let's go to, I think I have kind of like, so I'm going to say, showing off my keyboard prowess here, my C major scale. All right, so let's go to a MIDI insert, and let's say transformer. So we will say we want to transform MIDI note events that are equal to, let's say, and I'm just going to hit C3, and then I want to take value 1 and let's add 4. So now as I go down, so I'm playing a C, and that's automatically transforming it to an E. So if I choose, I want to transform it to an E flat, I can now just say I just add it wrong. So say I just wanted to add 3. So now so that way you could take every C3 and turn it into like an E flat, or if I type in 4, it could automatically turn it into an E. So try that. Let me know if that helps. So if I start a C major scale, so it's going to start on the 3rd. So let me know if that helps. So again, transform, and this is just a MIDI insert on the transformer. And if you wanted to do it in real time, we could do kind of the same exact thing in the input transformer. So we could say, okay, let's go to the track and open panel, and we could set up kind of the same exact scenario. So you wanted to say, I want to take every note that's equal to C3 and take value 1, which is the pitch of the MIDI note message, and add 4 to that. So every C turns into an E. So 4 semitones. So let me know if that is helpful. Okay, Michael Teams is giving ice cream to everybody. Just going crazy. He's just happy for his birthday. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. All right, we have Cubase X joining as well. Sable Winters is like, whoo, thought today was a Zoom. So yeah, it'll be on Friday. Okay, so you just see somehow Groove Agent feels clumsy compared to example Easy Drummer, or I haven't gotten to know it properly yet. Could you please show a few main things and the basic use of Groove Agent? So since you said Easy Drummer, we could think of Groove Agent as being almost like two different drum machines. One will be kind of a virtual drummer, and this is probably similar to like what Easy Drummer, where we have kind of different drum sets. And then we also have one that's more kind of like an MPC style sample based. So if I wanted to start, and since you mentioned Easy Drummer, if I wanted to start a particular project, I could just come over here. So I'm going to, we'll just solo this. And then I just click on follow transport. So how a lot of times I work with Groove Agent that I really like is I will just, we have different instruments. So each of these sounds, once we select a sound, I could just say, okay, I want this to have more room sound in a kick, or I want it no room sound, or just kind of like in the middle. So, but if I click this, so I see my settings for the kick. If I click on the snare, we could have completely independent sounds for each of our drum sounds. So we could have all the settings here completely optimized. But a lot of times, like I like, to start with, maybe like Forget the Past is a great one, just to kind of get your head on it. So click on follow transport. Now when I like writing an idea, instead of having just the metronome or click, I'll just, hit play. And then wherever I'm at, we could have Groove Agent just kind of automatically follow the transport. So think of it as like your really wonderful drummer that never complains, that will just sit there and play a basic beat for you, not give you any attitude, and will just kind of just sit there and do it quietly in the background for you. Now, once we want to kind of tweak particular patterns, we could go to the pattern and now click on edit. And at this point, if I want to take the built-in patterns, I could just say, okay, I could adjust the dynamics going vertically. And I could adjust the complexity. So as I move this over to right, so this one pattern here, and we have up to 8 patterns in Groove Agent SE, but this one pattern can have all these different variations. Now we could also have some fun stuff as well. So we could just say auto complexity. So we could say at every 1 bar. So instead of playing the same pattern over and over again, we could just say, okay, I just want it to automatically do every measure, play 1 or 2 levels of complexity higher than I want it. Now, if I wanted to control this via MIDI, I could just learn CC and move whatever knob I want on my controller, and I could just have it automatically just dynamically control my dynamics and complexity. And if I wanted this to do like a halftime feel, just as a variation, and maybe every 4 measures do a drum fill, so it's not playing the same thing over and over again. So let's say I take this off and I wanted to have all these random things captured. I could go to Groove Agent here, and on its input, I'll say, let's just set Groove Agent as the input and hit record. And now all the patterns that we're doing. And when we look at the patterns, I could have intros, these different patterns. So, and these will be just triggered by MIDI notes, or I could just have fills and endings. And if you wanted to add more swing, so let's say, so we see kind of this natural pattern, and then everything that I just generated has been recorded. So if I wanted to go back and edit all these great patterns that were just done, we could just come right over here and be able to edit everything right there. So everything can be recorded directly into the system. Plus, you could just have it. So I often start with just like a basic pattern and then kind of maybe right along there to get the groove, hence the name Groove Agent. And then at that point, I could just put in the fills, do variations, go to different patterns. And, you know, like other programs, we could just choose to come over here. We could drag and drop right in, or we could record directly in as well. So either way, you have a tremendous amount of flexibility with Groove Agent. So let me know if that helps, Uno Momento. Okay, Michael Teams wants everyone to whack the like button, so that enables us to continue to do the live streams. All right, so we have a question. What's the biggest advantage when using Steinberg audio interfaces with Cubase over others? I'm curious about the UR series. All right, so let's say I'm here and I have like an audio track. So one of the great things is once we have our input set, so let's say, okay, I am here and I have my stereo input set and my stereo input is defined. So I will, and this comes with the UR22C and higher, not the UR12. But I'm going to go to my audio connections and get to inputs. And let's say on my stereo input, I have 1 and 2. So I go to the track. And we have this input that we've defined here. I'll just do a new project here real quick. Take it from scratch. Okay, so I'll just say we're going to do one stereo preset that's routed to my UR24. All right, and we'll enable direct monitoring. So let's say we add an audio track. Okay, so I want this to be a stereo track. And then we'll see the hardware settings. So once you have the input defined, we have the UR22C, UR44C to UR-RT2, RT4. We'll have built-in DSP. So I say, okay, let's come over here to my send. So we have built-in reverb. So the unit itself has reverb built in that we could monitor through without any latency. This RevX reverb, which also sounds phenomenal, will show up as a plugin. When we want to record with a morphing channel strip, we could come over here and we could have a combination EQ and compressor that we could have on our input stage. So before the signal, we could choose whether this is going to be on the input bus or, you know, we want it to be an insert. So at this point, we could just say, anytime that I record, if I wanted to have a compressor, I could apply the compression in EQ to the signal without any discernible monitoring latency. Think of it like the DSP as being like a digital mixer. So whereas other programs, you have other interfaces, you often have to take those particular plugins, and the plugins are running in software and can have delay. So we probably all put a track in monitoring and put a reverb plugin, and then the singer's like really kind of baffled of why they're hearing a weird delay, and that's the latency of the plugin and the monitoring path. But here with this particular interfaces, I get, instead of going into like a different program that's not connected, all the setting excuse me, all of the settings for the particular DSP information is automatically stored and accessed right here inside of Cubase. So you want a high pass filter, you want to invert the polarity, you want to come over here and, switch the phase. If you wanted to, switch the phase on just the left channel, or if we have a mono source, so let's say I have a mono track, we could also get a number of different. So let's say, okay, I want this going to my left input. So let's say now when I go to my amps, I could just say, okay, instead of a morphing channel strip, I could also, for mono sources, have built-in guitar amps as well. So when we want to come, you have the built-in DSP. Plus, the C interfaces offer 32-bit analog conversion. So, it's a higher level converter as well. So there's a couple unique things with the UR interfaces. Okay, reading through. All right, so we'll have Sable Winters. We'll sing Happy Birthday to Michael Teams on Friday. So we should probably avoid doing the, understanding what latency is with Zoom and all singing together. But we'll let Sable sing, so. Okay. All right. So we see kind of a clarification. It says, "Thanks, Greg." But it says, "But I want that when I hit press. When I press C, I hear the notes C and E together, like harmonizer. Also, when a note D, I want to hear D and F together. So the pitch value is changed for each note." All right. So let's see if we can set that up. Okay, so let me just activate this. So we might be able to do this with a quarter MIDI plugin. Okay, so there may be some other clever way of doing this, but let me just... All right, so I hit C. All right, so when I hit C here, I think that there is way to learn. right, so let's just say I want to do. All right, so let's say, okay, I just want to add, let's say major third. So now. So now I'm just playing one note. And okay, so here's the learned function. So let's say if I just start this brand new. Sorry. All right, so try go to a quarter. And then all right, so now all right, so say now I'll play D and I'll learn and set that to interval. And now I'll go to E. All right, take out a learn mode. So now. So kind of play around with that. So even if you just kind of come over here, let's say. You can just. So let me know if that works for you. Sorry for misunderstanding originally. So you see Spike Williams just mentioned, it says, played some of my son some recordings I made with URRT2, and he was blown away by the clarity. I've been recording for over 40 years. So yeah, the little hardware transformer makes a huge difference. All right, so we have Mikkel Hovel. Great to see you on the live stream. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. All right, so we see from Chris Johansson. Hi, Greg. How do I change the location of a Cubase project on PC after I moved it in File Explorer? Every time I open a project, it still creates a mixdown in images folder in the old location. Okay, so it should, let's come over here and let's say I'll do new project. And I'm just going to put it into, so do new project here. And I'll just call this Chris. Okay, I'm just going to drag some loops in. All right, so now when we go into our pool window, we'll see that the location for these files, let me just change one of the preferences here, or I'll just get in my media menu. prepare archive. Okay, so we see that now we have our projects, Hangouts, Chris, and then we have kind of our audio folder laid out for us. So all of our files are now in that particular folder. Okay, so, and just make sure. So I'm going to move this, and I think this will be the same on Mac or Windows. So say I'll come to okay, so let's go to my Hangouts. And then we should see Chris. Okay. So I'm going to move this to my desktop. Okay, so it's closed. I'm going to save this. Okay, I'm going to call it Chris. Okay, so now I want to move this folder to the desktop. All right. So right now we save this. I'm going to just move this. So the project folder is in there with the audio and images. All right, so I'm going to close this. All right, and now I'm going to open up from the desktop the project. Okay, so I'm going to locate the files. All right, so they're both there. Okay, so let's say we have our files. And now when we go to export audio mixdown. So at this point, we can see my mixdown folder is automatically on the desktop, so it might be, so make sure that after you move the folder, that the project file itself, the .cpr, like the chris.cpr, make sure that that's in the folder. So I'm not sure if you move the folder and if the project file is within the folder. So you said the mixdown in the images folder. So as soon as it, let me just come over and see if we have the images folder that's been created on the desktop. So, and we have the images file there. So it could be contingent on where the actual .cpr file is. So make sure when you move it that this CPR file is within that particular folder. So. All right, so see Gerald Ely just saying great groove agent tips. That's my aha moment for today. So it's good. Yeah, once you get into it, it's really great. So we see the Heartbreak Time Machine. Thank you for that groove agent tutorial. Amazing. So good. Glad you liked it. And Uno Momento, who asked the questions that opened his eyes, he'll give it a try. All right. So we see a question. Hi, Greg. How do you import tracks, group tracks, and all from older projects into your current one? So let's say I have this project here and I want to import. So I'm going to go to import tracks from project. And let's say I will come over here to documents, to projects, and I'll do Amos Moses. And I'm going to choose the project. And then here what I want to do, let's say I want the drums, and the drums are all in this particular folder. And I could choose to import the events and parts, just the channel settings or automation. If you don't, so you can pick and choose. So I will come over here, hit OK, and all the data with their folder has automatically been imported. So go to File to import tracks from project. Select the project, and then you could just choose the folder. So you can see the folder hierarchy directly there. Let me know if that helps. All right. Okay, so we have a question from the Monk Beats. Great to see you on the live stream. How to filter block modulation CC1 or whatever MIDI message from a certain external MIDI device. I have a keyboard with a broken wheel that sends crazy messages. Thanks. So there's a couple ways. One is to just come over. A lot of times the controller, it's a common thing where they use the same physical mechanism for the pitch bend and mod wheel. So when one of them use one too much, they both break and send kind of unnecessary information. So if you wanted to come over here, you could say go to preferences in Cubase if it was just kind of a global thing, and go to MIDI filter, and here you could say I want to filter, and we could say okay, I wanted to add CC1 and I wanted to filter out controller CC1 on MIDI channel 3 or whatever. So we could do it there globally. Another way is like as you're recording notes, if you go to like the input transformer. So let's say I'll come to MIDI track. And on the input transformer, you could say project level, and let's open the panel, and you can say filter type is equal to controller, and it's going to be controller number 1. So in that way, we could filter out controller number 1 on particular tracks as you're recording. Or filter it out globally. All right, so we have a question. I would like to transpose 1 octave up a MIDI clip using a button on a MIDI device, though through MIDI remote. How to do it? Logical editor or macro? So I think logical editor is a good choice for that. So let's say okay, so they're all around like kind of C3. So I'm going to create just a MIDI logical editor. And we're going to transform notes, and we're going to say value, we're going to add 12. So we'll say okay, so we have these notes, and I'll just open these in the in-place editor so we could see them. Okay, so what I want to do now is to assign my MIDI remote. So let's say I want to take this button on my MIDI remote. Okay, and let's get to the mapping assistant. So I'm going to just press that button. Let's go to key commands. Let's get to process logical preset. Transpose up 1 octave. Double click. So now that function is assigned to that particular keyboard. So now I come here. We just let me see if I have to select. Yeah, so we could just do it just like that. So again, just kind of create the logical editor preset. Select all notes, value, add 12, and trigger it. All right, thanks for all the great questions. See, Kuba is just saying, now I understand how special the UR series are. So it's a wonderful discussion of flying and planes. So I miss being in planes. I still have 3.4, almost 3.5 million miles to use on American Airlines. So see, Matt Ellison just says, love the share copy feature. It'll really come in handy. We see Benny won't be able to make the Zoom meeting on Friday. He has a gig. So have a good gig. We'll miss you, and hopefully we'll see you at the end of October. I think it'll be the 28th or something like that for October. All right, so we see from Jose Antonio Gazo. Hello, is there an easy way to convert a mono channel track to a stereo channel track? Not really. It used to be kind of, there used to be a lot of consequences when we used to have like being able to take like, a mono track and turn it into a stereo track, and then it could get all sorts of consequences later down for like different plugins and stuff like that. But if I wanted to take a mono track, and let's see if I take this, I think we might be able to do it with a render in place. So let's say I'm just going to select the particular track here, not the event, but the track by itself. And then let's go to I think we could do it this way. So let's do render in place. Let's go to our render settings, and I'm just going to choose like my channel settings, and then I'll take that mono track there. Let me just set let's see if I have this going to a stereo group. So now we get automatically, so I just have it being routed out to a stereo destination. And if I wanted to take that, let's say if I come here to, so I select that event, it's being routed out to a stereo source, and go to render in place. Let's go to render settings, and then I could just say remove source tracks. So I'll just now hit render again. I have complete signal path selected. So now our kick is automatically just rendered as stereo right there. So give that a shot. Let me know if that works. Okay, so we have a question. Hello, Greg. Assuming I don't know what's the BPM of an audiophile music, how can I detect it and set its BPM correctly? The song seems to have a dynamic BPM. So in Cubase, you're going to have tempo detection. So let's come over here. Activate this. So let's say if we have something that's fluctuating, we don't know what the BPM is. So we hear the click. So what I'm going to do now is select the event or events. Go to your project menu, do tempo detection, hit analyze. And then I'm going to do just a quick offbeat correction. And now if I want that to didn't like that. So, and then that's really kind of all you have to do with that. We just, so, and then if you select that you want it to be, you know, to be steady tempo, you could then just go to your audio to advanced and choose set definition from tempo, and then just type in a static tempo value. All right. All right, let's go to the next question. You see people expressing their appreciation for all of Jazz Dude's efforts. It's always great having Jazz Dude giving information in real time as I try in vain to catch up every live stream. So appreciate everything Jazz Dude does. And I think that Jazz Dude needs to come to the Zoom social meetup. So we all expect Jazz Dude to be there because it is Michael's. We're going to be celebrating Michael's birthday. So we hope to see Jazz Dude and Agent K both on the Zoom meetup. So See, Mikhail is just mentioning, so it says it seems like some instrument signature tracks changes from 4/4 to 3/4. I might need to do it manually. So yeah, if there are, once you do the tempo detection, that, it'll give you the signature track and just kind of listen to it and just put the signature track. So it kind of figures out what the beat is. So, because it doesn't want to assume that and I just see a comment from Got Your, says, after the tempo detection always defaults to 1/4 time, which is weird. It's because we don't want to it's figuring out what the beat is, but it's not necessarily, I'll just do this one more time, but it's not necessarily figuring out if you're in 3/4, 6/8, 5/4, 7/8, whatever meter you have. So let's come. And I'll just do the tempo, select the event. Let's do the tempo detection. All right, so it gives us the 4/4 because it's broken down the beat. So right now what I want to do is just to put a 4/4 there on a downbeat. Now, again, if I wanted this to be super steady, instead of fluctuating, I would select the event or events and go to advanced to set definition from tempo and hit OK. And now, like we were talking about earlier, I see my tempo fluctuating. I turn it off. And now I could have it play back perfectly steady at 144 beats a minute without any variations. So it's stretching every single beat. So again, why we see the meter here is because, it's hard to figure out exactly what the meter is of the song, automatically. So, it's hard to know if it's in 3/4 or 4/4 or 5/4 or 2/4. So that's why it just kind of it doesn't automatically assume that your music's in 4/4 time. All right, so I just see in this screen, is it possible to see tempo? So probably if you want to see what the actual tempo values are. So if you select the node here, we can see the tempo value. So anytime that you select the node, so say I'll just switch to selection mode. So whatever node I have selected will automatically, we could see directly here, or we could see all the tempo information here in kind of a list. And if we wanted to see that more numerically, we could go to the project menu, to the project browser, and select the tempo track information. And then you could see all, what beat, what measure, exactly, and the exact tempo value set there. So, but if I misunderstood, let me know. All right, so we have a question. Can I have more than one chord track per project? So you can have one chord track, but you can have different track versions of a chord track. So let's say I was here. And I'm going to take my guitar part and drag it to the chord track. And we have a chord track. Okay, so life is good. But now what I could do, instead of having multiple chord tracks, I could just add a new version. And so now if I wanted to go back to version 1, to my new version, we could just kind of have multiple track versions. So one chord track within the project, but multiple track versions of that single chord track. So in essence, you could just toggle back and forth between them if you needed. And I just see, maybe some of these questions are for Nuendo as well, but it is the same. So it's the same functionality in Cubase and Nuendo for all the tempo and chord track information. Okay, Benny just asks, it seems to be hard to get your hands on Steinberg headphones. Any idea where I can get a couple? So with the headphones, they come in like a bundle. So there's like a podcast pack or a UR12 pack or a recording package, which comes with a microphone, a mic cable, a little mic stand, headphones, the audio interface, and like Cubase AI. So that's where the headphones are kind of the Steinberg headphones come within that. But they're not sold separately. So if you really wanted them, you could get the, one of the recording packs, I think they're called. So I don't have a pair. So took me a long time to get some Yamaha headphones. So. All right. So we have a question. Do you know if there are any concerns or problems you heard about using the new AMD Ryzen 9 with Cubase? At one time, I knew Cubase preferred Intel chips on PC. So I don't think I think maybe like going back to really really early days that people got better performance out of like the Pentiums versus, and this is I think an Athlon series. But I think the AMD chips were great. I know Jazz Dude is a big fan of them. I had like Opteron chips for the longest time, like when they were like some of the very first 64-bit processors. And so I know that Steinberg does a lot of work with AMD. In the US, they used to have like kind of a whole media group that, helped out audio engineers and would, do a lot of research in that and come up with solutions. And they were very proactive. But I don't anticipate any problems with the new Ryzens, but I don't necessarily try them out. I'm not one to buy, new processors just to see how they work, personally. So, but I know Jazz Dude's had a lot of experience with the Ryzen series, so he might be able to best to comment on that. And I see Jazzy just mentioning, no, Intel chips just made the serious trouble in the last generation. So, all right. Okay, let me go to a question that was mailed in. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. Bear with me just for a moment. Okay, so we have a question. When I finish making a 4-bar or 2-bar loop of MIDI events and I want to duplicate and have them spaced out perfectly, not next to each other, but like you could see in my project, only 2 bars apart all the way. So let's say 22 bars. Is there a setting or a way I can have it duplicate the exact amount of space between each event? Not the total duplication of the event. I know how to do that, just the correct timing amount so that it'll be easy to duplicate and everything goes in the right spots. So let's say a verse. Thank you. All right. So let's come over here and take a look. And so I think, let's say we have, I'll just kind of chop up a MIDI event here. So let's say, do a couple of bars here, and let me just crop that. Okay, so let's say my event was slightly less than these 3 bars, and I wanted this to duplicate, and I'll just kind of draw this in a little bit, and I'll turn my snap off. So let's say I needed these bars to kind of fit into 3 bars. So when I duplicate an event and I just hit Control D, we can see that this is going to come in, slightly before measure 107. And as we do this repeatedly, it's going to get kind of more and more offset because the event doesn't fit the entire range. But what we want to do is instead to use the range tool. So I'm going to enable my snap by hitting the letter J, and I'm going to say, we're going to copy this range. And this range includes like a little bit of silence at the end. So now when I hit Control or Command plus the letter D for duplicate, that this will automatically line up on the grid because we're just kind of copying that space. So we're copying that amount of time. And this one, I'll show it in our project. It doesn't have all sorts of tempo changes on it. So I'll go over here. So say this is a little bit shorter. I'm going to just select the range, and now duplicate the range. And now the starting of the events will always be on the grid. And again, that's just Control or Command plus the letter D. But instead of duplicating the events themselves when they don't fit, where we do this, and all of a sudden it's off, what we could do now is select the range time and duplicate that, and now everything will maintain its relation to the grid. All right, let's go back to the live chat. Okay, reading through projects. Okay, so I just see a question. When I set my project format, 48K, 32-bit, should my interface settings have the same format, or does it not matter for mixing only? So ideally, you'd want the sample rate to be the same. And when you choose 32-bit, that would be for the recording. But, if your interface is set to 44.1 and then you have it set to 48, that could cause some problems. Most of the times, the interface will automatically switch unless when you go to your device, your studio menu to Studio Setup, and we select your audio interface under Audio System. If it's set to externally clocked, if the clock source here is set to internal, it should kind of automatically follow the project setup settings. But if it's clocking externally, like let's say to like a word clock distribution, or it's, your interface is, is syncing to a master clock over an ADAT light pipe or SPDIF or ASEBU digital connection. That can make a difference, but generally keep the same sample rate. But most interfaces will automatically switch, but some can be set to, told not to listen to always stay at this sample rate. Like if you have Dante stuff, if you have Dante interfaces, they like to, switching sample rates, that it's not so good, especially with Dante virtual sound card. It could be problematic just to kind of switch easily. So, but for the most part, make sure that sample rate is And make sure your sample rate is the same, and it should 9 times out of 10 it will just automatically change for you, unless you probably specifically have a clocking scenario for your audio interface. All right, so we see from Kevin Mehmed. Great to see you on the live stream, Kevin, from Maryland. Could you show me the Steinberg Morphing MIDI channel plugins? I missed that earlier. I have the head rush foot switch. So I'm not sure, there's a morphing. I'm not sure what the morphing MIDI channel plugin is. There's a morphing filter. So I'm not sure what you want to accomplish, Kevin, with the morphing MIDI, but let's say if I'm here and I have, let's say, drum loop, I could put it on as an insert for the morphing filter. So let's say I just want to come here to the morphing filter. But I'm not sure how that's going to interact with your foot switch. So, but let me know what you want to accomplish, Kevin, and maybe I'd be able to answer. So you see from Kevin, could that be useful for me? Does that cost money? So I'm not sure if have the same morphing MIDI channel thing. But let me know, Kevin, if that's what you were expecting to see or what you want to do, and we could see if we could figure it out for you. All right, we see Mikkel Hovels just has to go, and just thanking and for the live stream, and he enjoys watching it, so that's great. All right, so we see from Spike Williams, is Steinberg not missing a trick by only offering headphones in a package? I ended up buying Beyerdynamic, but I actually wanted the Steinbergs. I'm not sure, I'm not kind of in those decisions. Obviously, Yamaha has lots of headphone offerings. Yamaha, the headphones that I'm using now, I think it's the HPH MT8. I think that's the model number. Sometimes Yamaha product names are kind of I've heard him jokingly referred to as license plates, and trying to remember them. So I'm not sure if there's anything where I'm not sure if people have asked for Steinberg headphones, but obviously people are. But I'm not sure if there's anything where it's like, okay, for headphones sold in a bundle, it would be Steinberg branded headphones, but headphones that are sold by the company, sometimes Steinberg, kind of focuses on, like software development, and we work in conjunction with Yamaha for hardware development for like the audio interfaces and control surfaces, like in the past with the CC121 or the Nuage. So we work closely with our parent company, Yamaha, and they offer a broad range of different headphones for professional audio or consumer choices. So I'm not sure if there's any, thing with that, but I'll mention it to our hardware product manager that people want to buy Steinberg headphones. Okay. Just reading more questions. Okay. Okay, so I just see from Kevin says, sorry, I meant the Yamaha Midi Morphing plugin. I missed earlier how to convert the new Yamaha new version 1.5. So with the Steinberg interface, I think I understand now. Thanks, Kevin, for the clarification. Like when we have a particular... So I'm going to just switch this to direct monitoring is on. Let me go. So it's with the morphing channel strip. So let me just... So, you know, this is just a combination of a compressor and EQ. And one of the cool things is you could kind of morph between kind of optimal settings between them, like so. So that's why they call it kind of a morphing, but it doesn't really have any impact. You know, with MIDI, I mean, I guess you could control the functions with MIDI, but it's really just compressor EQ combination. And I think you have a Focusrite interface, so this only comes bundled with the Yamaha or the Steinberg branded Yamaha manufactured interfaces. It's like the UR series or AXR4. So we have a question. Is it possible to set up Bluetooth wireless headphones with Cubase? You can, but often the results are less than satisfactory. One, they have high latency. So it could be that, you know, it's 43 milliseconds of latency. And often you're going to be have a fixed sample rate of 48K. So if your project's at 96K or 192 or 44.1, it may not work. So for those main reasons, but primarily the latency, like as you're working in a DAW and you hit play, you don't want it necessarily to be an additional 43 milliseconds. Plus, while the technology has improved, you know, the fidelity of it, I understand the convenience. But while everything has improved fidelity-wise, it still doesn't sound as good as a wire. So you can come over... Excuse me 1 second, my cough. You know, you can, you know, come over to your computer and then route the audio out to your, you know, your headphones if you wanted to. But it, again, there's, you know, just beware that it's not going to be so satisfying. So we see from Seamerus, bring Nuage back. So, you know, there's still some available for sale. So, you know, if you want one and you live in the U.S., you know, I could put you in touch with someone. So, but you could email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de because I think there's still a few available in the warehouse. Okay, so we see from Doug O. It says, last week you showed us how to apply voicings to a chord track, but when I click apply, my chords on the track are not updated. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Thanks. So it could be that I think we have a chord track here, so I'll go ahead and put in some. All right, I'll just... love just laying my fingers down randomly and seeing what chord I played. All right, so let's say, all right, and I want it to be a C seventh. Yeah, let's make this all right, so I think that when we come up to the voicing here, that we will, so say we do just triads. I think it might be how it's going to relate on the actual tracks. Let's say, all right, I'll just throw in some. All right, so now we're going to take this track and go to chords, and we'll say follow the chord track. So just say, so you see that on the other tracks that now follow the chord track, that's when the voicings will be just set to simple triads when you do it there. Okay, so we have a question. What am I doing wrong? Not getting the step designer MIDI modifiers to work. I'm apparently missing something. Okay. All right. All right. So let's try to step designer. So let's say I have this and go to, sorry, I had to do some moderation there. Let's go to step designer. Okay. All right. So let me just, sorry about that. I'll turn the volume down here just a little bit. Okay, just try it on a new project, or let me revert. All right, wonderful to see Best Screen Jesus on the live stream. Glad you can make it. Okay. Okay, so let's say. Okay, so with the step designer, so let's say if I'm right, I think I may have just put on the wrong, maybe reset it. Okay, so let's say okay, so now when I play, we're going to just hear, I think, just a piano. So, and it looks like when there's other notes that are, so we see other notes that are kind of just triggering that. So I'll take those away. So you could switch between different patterns here. But let's say, so when you hit play, that's when the step designer will so as soon as we kind of just do this, and you could go to different patterns. So so you could do kind of stuff like that, or you say, okay, I wanted to do so it's just when you hit play, that's when the step designer will automatically kind of just kick in. And just make sure. All right. Okay, so let me know if things from Patrick, if that makes sense. All right. We see Duggo, that makes sense, I think, with the chord pads. Okay, so we have a question. Is it possible to use a MIDI performance to create timing and velocity quantize preset? So yes, so. Okay, so let's say if I am here and let's say we have, I'll just switch this over to velocity. So let's say we have, okay, and on this I'm going to put just a quick groove on it. So all you have to do, so let's say, okay, we'll put this into a quantizer. Let's take the swing. So if we go to the Quantize panel, right here, all you have to do is take that MIDI part and drag it in. And let's say that this was all, so let's say I quantize this to, And then once we do that, you see that the Quantize preset has changed here. So let's say I quantize this now to quarter notes. So I hit Q, and we look at all of my different events. So kind of, not so interesting. I will come over here. Let's select all the notes, and I'm going to choose the Quantize preset. And now I'm going to quantize. And this also includes the velocity settings. So let's say I had kind of all maxed velocity. Here, if I didn't want to change the timing, but I liked that velocity, I could change the position value in the quantize settings to 0 and the velocity to 100. So now we see pretty much a fixed velocity. Now when I quantize, I don't change the note rhythm, but I change the velocity pattern. So just drag a MIDI event into the quantize panel, and that will create a preset for both timing and velocity. All right. So it says, hi, Greg. How can I MIDI map my Alesis MK2 DM10 E-Kit properly in Cubase 12 Pro? Currently, half the pads are working and they're not assigned enough to play. Hi-hat plays crash, for instance. So I guess this is probably with, if you're using it with Groove Agent or, kind of whatever the source is. But let's say if we open up Groove Agent, check if you're doing it with a Groove Agent, you'll want to come here. It's kind of a subtle thing, and just click on Use Hardware Controller Mapping. And you have kind of a Yamaha one as well as E-drum controller. So I think this was kind of what you may want to use for your Alesis or like a Roland V kit. So try the E-drum controller. And then once you have this activated, you could always now just come over here, right click on a pad, and you could just learn the trigger note. So you could just say, boom, hit your kick, and that will assign the kick pad to that particular instrument sound. So, but the key to this is activating, if you're using Groove Agent, is just to come here and to make sure that it's set up to use the hardware controller mapping. Okay, so I just see, hi Greg, question. Says, I dropped a retrospective record of an instrument from a 2-bar repeated loop. It created 5 tracks worth of MIDI data. Though these events would not trigger the VST instrument. Okay, so let me come over here. And let's say I'll just do a quick loop for retrospective record. Okay, so let's say I just want to do two bars. All right, so let's say I'm just playing. So I'm not in record. And let me just. So should be getting. Let me just. All right, so I'm not going to be in record. Okay, so I'm just going to play. All right, so now I've done this, and when we go to the retrospective record, we can see kind of the retrospective record settings over here. So we'll see our retrospective recording, and what I want to do is insert. We could choose to insert. So I had it in a linear. So I had it in a loop, like a cycle recording. So I'm going to insert as a cycle recording. So now we play back. So, and if I come over here to the lanes, you can see that this is the last take. So I didn't record any of these. And so it could be perhaps that if you let it go, that maybe it's muted. So check to make sure when you open the lanes that you see the event. So now when I play this, so, or if I want to, so it's like, okay, I want to listen to this one. So we listen to that. So let's say I just grab kind of my hand tool and say, okay, I want to listen to this, that, or listen to this. So once it's putting into cycle record, if you just kind of let it and you didn't play anything, it could be that there's no data for the last part and that you may have to comp it together using the comp tool or unmute it using the lanes. Okay. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to batch rename audio files in Nuendo or Cubase? So let's see if we come over. All right. So say I just record. Okay. So I think we could do it in Nuendo, but it might not be available in Cubase. But let's see if we could. Yeah, so let me open up Nuendo. I'll show you Nuendo quickly here, so just bear with me. Okay, so just do our recording. So here we could do edit, rename objects. So we'll say, you know, I wanted to take the original name and call it this and hit OK. And then all the files will be renamed that way. So, but I don't think that function is in Cubase. I'll just take a look. So we're back in Cubase. Yeah, so you can do it in Nuendo easily, but not Cubase. Okay, so we see question, how do you control the MIDI pitch bend to go to specific values, such as a whole step? Okay, so pitch bend is always kind of an interesting anomaly because so many instruments, you know, each instrument can have different levels of pitch bend. And this was kind of a unique thing that came in, you know, version 12. So if I come here and I have pitch bend currently on this particular instrument, it's set to 2 semitones up and 2 down. But this could be different on every instrument. So you could say, okay, I want it to be 12 up and 2 down. So, but a lot of times it'll be set to 2 and 2. So you have to kind of know what the instrument is. So now when we want to do pitch bend editing, and this is a great thing, it was added in version 11. When we come, we'll say, okay, let's go to pitch bend. We can go to your pitch bend setup. So we have a little setup here. So we can say, okay, we want to match this pitch bend range up and down to what's in your instrument. And now we could also show the semitones grid, and we have a little snap function. So if I'm editing, there's nothing worse than drawing in pitch bend and then drawing something in painstakingly and realizing that it's, flat. So now as I draw in pitch bend data, it's automatically going to snap to a particular semitone. If we don't have snap turned on, then I could place it kind of anywhere in between. But if I have snap turned on, now I could only place it at particular snap values. So once we see the grid, once you activate pitch bend in the controller lane, go to the setup, match the grid set your range here to match the instrument, and then click on show semitones grid, and then you could snap based on that. All right, so just see, people maybe using the Project Logical editor for renaming events. I think you could rename tracks, but not necessarily events. I could be mistaken, though. Or you could rename events, but not necessarily the audio files themselves. Okay, so we have a question. Can you give us some insight regarding Steinberg Soft Clipper plugin? What is a soft clipper, and is it different than any of the other clipper plugins that are out there? So soft clipper is just kind of a softer distortion. So let's say if I wanted to I'll just do it on this project here real quick. So a lot of people go out and spend a lot of money on different soft clipper plugins and don't realize that there is one that comes with Cubase.
That was a long, long time ago. Now our two grown daughters are married with
So we'll come over here.
kids of their own. And I know your dad's pretty happy now, 'cause what began as our first kiss, it started all of this. Do you remember the day that we met? It was a long, long time.
And as we do this, we have control over kind of the second and third order harmonics.
And I still love you like the day that we met. Oh, a long, long time ago.
So here's,
Day we first met.
we're going to match the volumes. Here's a,
Time ago. It was 7th grade in the school parking lot.
so we have that control over kind of the overtones.
You looked my way and your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you caught me too.
So it can give it like a little bit of nice glue overall and just kind of give you that more analog sound that people often seek. Okay, so we see a question. Is it possible to set a default VST instrument that auto loads when you add a new instrument track, or must an instrument be manually selected? So a lot of times I believe that it's going to, whatever the last instrument you selected will automatically be preserved. So like if I come over here and say, okay, I want to go to backbone, I hit add track. Okay. So I think that the settings are just preserved from what the last state was. So at that point, it'll just, so now when I go to add an instrument track, it'll stick to backbone. So we say add instrument track. And if, another way of doing this that a lot of people miss is just kind of coming over here to media to your VST instruments and say, oh, I just want Hallian Sonic there. I want Groove Agent here, just dragging and dropping right from the media bay as well. So, but it'll retain the settings of the last instrument that you loaded. Okay, so we see from Vladi G. Greg, last night I was watching a video where you explained how the MIDI input transformer worked, which was awesome. With it, I was able to change the poly pressure of the cymbal chokes from my E-drum kit to a note. Now I have chokes working, but I want to be able to have more than 4 MIDI transform codes to map more cymbal chokes. What might you be able to offer to be able to assign more than 4 MIDI transform codes? You could run the input transformer, directly here. So let's say, okay, I have my, just select, let's say my piano, and we can see our input transformer here where we could see, our 4 nodes. But if you go to the MIDI inserts, there's also just a transformer plugin as well. So I think you could, get an additional 4 right there. So that should be enough. I think 8 cymbals, hopefully. But try running the transformer as the input transformer and the transformer, and you'll notice that the settings are, basically the same. All right. So we see Spike Williams has to dash. He says, thanks, Greg, and thanks to the wonderful Cubase community. Let's not forget to thank the folks behind Cubase, the best dog by a country mile. Stay safe, people. Yeah. So all the teams, and it's a really well coordinated team of very dedicated developers and product planning and documentation and licensing people in the digital unit. I get to be kind of the voice or face of a lot of great efforts of what that team does. They make my job much easier. Okay. All right. So we see question. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to record MIDI notes, CC, or audio only in editors and disable record in tracks? Thanks. Well, the editors are really simply showing, the editors are showing what's in the track itself. So it's kind of a reflection of what the container type is. I mean, otherwise, do you want to have, so this is really just a view of what's on the track itself. So everything that's going to be recorded in here will be reflected on a track. Otherwise, like the data would almost be like homeless, if you will. So I don't know a way to do that, or if, maybe if you could share if there's a particular workflow that you're looking to utilize. But otherwise it's gonna, the editor is a reflection of the container on the project window, which I think makes sense. See Jazz Dude just mentioning it's really great how Steinberg added new project logical editor presets. So yeah, I contributed, I sent a bunch over for them as well. So, and it's just a powerful feature, and it's done by Werner Kracht, who's, been a Cubase developer since, Cubase 1. You could see him on the About screen. So. All right. So we have another question. Is there a way to have the mix consoles track in a totally different order than in the project window? So kind of, we could change some aspects of it. So we could take the mix console and then actually move, like, there's kind of 3 different zones of the mix console. So let's say if we're, so if I wanted to always have, so when you come here to our zones, like I could choose to, okay, I want like, my kick and snare top to always be on, to be fixed on the left or right side. So, regardless of where things are, or if I wanted my output, like my stereo out, to always be fixed on the right hand side. So we could create zones, and that's independent, but and we could hide different tracks if we go to our visibility, and we could have kind of independent orders where we can hide different tracks, but we can't necessarily say I want, my overheads before the bass, if, other than, or after the bass, without the track order being there, unless it's kind of anchored to one of the left or right zone. Okay, so we see question, why can't I hear a sample when dragging it into the project window? So if I have, let's say, a loop here, just find some audio. So, we could audition it here, so you don't, so while I'm dragging it in, and if it's still auditioning, I still hear it. So, but it would, make sure that you have preview active, and sometimes you may have to have the control room turned on to audition. But while I'm dragging it in, mine seems to be able to audition and hear. See from Vladdy G on the Transformer, you nailed it. So, all right. Okay, so we see from Doug O says, thanks for the drag and drop tip. Is it possible to modify, remove, reorder items in the media/VST instruments pane? So I think it's really just going to be, if we go to the studio menu, and we'll see our VST plugin manager, that you can come over here. So you could customize. So let's say I click on VST instruments. I want to duplicate let's say I want to duplicate this particular collection. So I'm going to click on plus to add a collection. So I'm going to copy the current collection. All right, we'll call it Doug O. Okay, and as I want to do this, if I want to change the order, I could do that. So now I think when we go to our media menu, let's go home, and we go to VST instruments, then now we can see that Hallian Sonic is on the bottom pad shop. So you could change it just by going to your VST plugin manager and then creating kind of a new plugin collection. So you could organize the plugins as you see fit. All right, so we see from Benny, question, is there any setting that makes when I name the tracks that they're all capital letters all the time, not having to use caps lock? So I don't know of anything. I think most people would use the cap lock. I'll take a look in the Project Logical editor. I don't think there is, but yeah, I don't know anything. So I think the caps lock is going to be the only choice for that. So, all right, let me see if I think we had maybe one more question or so that was mailed in. Thanks for all the great questions from everyone. Hope everyone's learned a new tip or trick. Okay, so we had a question that's mailed in. First of all, so many thank yous for your wonderful help, patience, and expertise along the way with with all your team. My question today, please, is there any way to save and export ratings and multi-timbral presets I did on one computer to another using Hallian Sonic 3 within Cubase or standalone mode? All right, so when we go to our media bay. So if we want to export all the presets to another computer, let's say we go to media bay, come to user content, and then at this point you'll see like VST3 presets, and you'll see like Hallian Sonic here. And at this point you could see all of the different, I'll just change the name. So we could see all of your presets here, and that could be copied. And if you want to find this location, just right click and come over here and just choose Reveal in Explorer or Reveal in Finder, and it'll take you directly to that location. Then you could copy all of those presets. As far as all of the ratings, I think that's going to be in the Media Bay 3.db file. So it's probably going to be in your preferences on the Windows side. To get to it, what you want to do is go to like your start menu, and you see like your Cubase group, and then you'll see user settings and data folder. If you are on Mac, what you want to do is to go to your Finder and hold down the Alt or Option key, the Option key on your Mac, and go to Library, and then you'll see Preferences. And then you'll scroll down to, you'll see Cubase 12. And in here, you'll see MediaBay3.db. Copy that file, and it's going to be kind of within the same folder that I showed on Windows. Copy that folder over to your new computer, and then all of your ratings should be carried over. All right, we got just a couple minutes left. Let's jump back to live questions, see if we get one more question in. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to record multiple MIDI tracks at the same time? This is useful if you want to create a stack of different sounds that you can play and record at the same time. So yeah, we'll show you how to do that. So all you have to do is once you have the MIDI tracks enabled, so let's say want to come here, we'll just create a quick hang on just one second. I don't think it will. Sorry, my son's just dropping off a package for me. Just trying to squeeze it underneath the door. Okay, so let's say I have these sounds. And I'll just duplicate this one more time. And let's... All right, so now I could come over here. I could close this. And if I wanted to put all of these into like a folder, I could just say, okay, let's take these and put this into so we'll just we'll move these to a new folder. Then I can arm the folder and just hit record. And then all three can record simultaneously like that. All right, so we're just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for all the wonderful questions. Look forward to seeing some fresh new faces on a Zoom meetup on Friday. So we'll be doing kind of an abbreviated session on Friday. Thanks for all the questions. And if you learned something, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thank you very much, and we'll see everyone on Friday. Goodbye.